Hey everyone, what's up? It is Kirsten over at Katie's House Foundation and Templeview Capital. I have co-host Julie on. Julie, happy Friday, and how are you?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
So today we're
talking about money today.
Yep, the Normalized Money Project and Show. That's what's up for all the teenagers listening in, and people that are starting over or on fixed income. And we are talking about stuffing envelopes today. Why would Grammy use envelopes to save money? So, Julie, share with us what you think.
Well, so when we talk about this, I think of the Dave Ramsey beans and rice. So it's really a different way of thinking, right? Because when you would say the word Grammy, the systems today are now credit. You go there, and how many people have cash on them? And how many people, we should use cash for certain things like tipping and such, because, we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice by eliminating cash. But it's difficult, I think, sometimes to think about this system only because it's a credit system now. It's a debit card. It's virtual currency. But I want to, go ahead and share the concept, because I'm not sharing the concept. I'm sharing this is an outdated way of thinking.
But it's really good for teenagers, or if you want to go back to the basics, which is to stop using your debit card and your credit cards and to get cash and split it into envelopes and label those envelopes for your rent, your utilities, your food, your cell phone, and any of your bills. And so last week we talked about building a budget. And then if you get way too many Starbucks trips, they cost $20 a piece for one person, give or take, I think, 12, $15. You're going to blow all those 10s and 20s, and then you're going to pull money from probably, you've got to pick another envelope, right? So
that's where, I think that, I think what you're trying to say is it's good for beginners, or it's good for people that have not had that, I don't want to call it sense of urgency, or like, oh shit, like what happened? I don't have anything left. I want this, we talk about, me being a police officer and me dealing with people. A lot of the times I don't see people making decisions based on long-term, because that's hard to do, right? That's something you have to think about. It's something that's hard sometimes. And you go there and you want the Starbucks. So you're emotional and you do what you feel you're, if it's a food that you wanted, or an item or whatever, right? You're physically taking money out and you're having to look at it and you're having to say, oh, I have $20 and it costs $22. Where am I going to get that $2 from? And that's where, there's a different way to think, which we can go into a whole nother, topic, off topic here, is, the system is now a credit system. So for me, what I've had to do is I've had to take one of my credit cards, and I basically use that credit card to gain points or cash back or whatever for all of my groceries, all of my gas, all of my miscellaneous expenses. And then I just pay myself before I use that money. I put that on the credit card. So you still have to have discipline. You still have to have a budget, but you know that you can use that credit card for those items and you don't have to particularly fumble with cash, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, that does require a different level of discipline. I think the conversation that I want to continue to have is, the cash, having that. And when people come in and they have you reset your budget, they actually will tell you, to close up several accounts and put everything in one account if you can. And then I know that there was a show, gosh, it was a while ago, but it was like a nanny show, but it was for money. I think it was the same girl though. She would go in and she would give them jars and she would say, okay, here's your money for groceries this week. And it forces you to then look at your planning for the week, right? And I think actually some homeless people do this. I have known through the foundation and family, people who, they have $5 for the day. and they have to eat the whole day on $5.
That's a perfect example of where this applies, and that, you know, you're looking at exactly what you have, and you have to look at exactly what you can get for that, right? So if you are given, you know, $20 and you have, you know, like you said, $5 for the day, okay, I've spent 15 of it, I only have $5 left. What do I actually need? Not what I want, but what I need. And that's where, you know, like we talked about last week, budgeting, and how some things are, you know, that Starbucks is what you may want, but it may come down to, you have to, you know, kind of police yourself on what you're doing. And the best way to police yourself is to actually have physically something to look at, to say, oh, I only have $5. You know, I want a venti lemonade. It costs $7. What do I do?
Well, and then that brings me back around to being forced to make more money, right? Because you're going to force yourself to start turning off lights and saving, I think. Because if you only have $5 for a week to eat, now you've wasted it, right? You've got now $3 or 3 days and $5. I'm just saying, it forces you to look at, oh no, what am I going to do? And you start looking for ways to make money or to save money. And so I'm going to change the conversation a little bit here as far as parents go, or people who enable others by not having them do this. They will give them access to their bank account through a debit card, parents maybe, and they're trying to be nice. And that, in my opinion, is not very nice, because the kids, you wonder why they come back and ask you for money as adults. Have they ever gotten to a point where they were 100% self-sufficient and could look at a budget, right? I mean, even if you don't write it out on an Excel spreadsheet, I think that just by making them have a cash system for a period of time and then having them pay for things, that forces them in their teenage years to then understand the concept even, right? Because you run out.
Well,
you run out.
I think that that's the biggest takeaway for today is that we really do need to focus on the concept and focus on understanding the concept of what a budget is and why it's in place, because we have to have those boundaries, and we have to have a way of knowing, okay, I've, you know, this is what I want to do. This is my dream. You know, if I go out and I get this loan for, you know, my dream car, how am I going to pay for it? What else do I have to do to cut it? You know, I mean, I know I'm kind of on the extreme of the homeless thing, right? I mean, I've got a job. I'm a teenager. I'm earning my money. I've earned enough to make this car payment, you know, and we've got to, I'm not saying that you can't do it because you're afraid you're going to lose your job, because we can't live like that. But we have to understand the concept, and the concept could change from, you're homeless and you have $5. How are you going to either make more money, or how are you going to cut your other expenses? Same thing goes for a high school kid. Okay, I can't get as many hours because I'm in school, but it's not the summer is when I make all my money, maybe. Or you just have to figure out, you know, okay, well, if I need to pick up an extra, you know, lawn mowing job during the weekend, then I do that so that I can make that extra $20 that I'm going to be short on. And like you said, if you physically have those envelopes and you physically see that money, I think you're more apt to be like, oh shit, how am I going to handle this? And think about it, right? Because we don't think about it when it's a credit card. We just hand it over and we figure, I'm going to make that money somehow, some way, but it's not immediate. And that's where I think your concept is, it's immediate. Well, you only have what you have.
I think Grammy would put the cash, separate it out for the month, right? Because it would come in at some point, or
well, you get paid. You say you get paid at the beginning of the month, right? Or you get paid.
You've got to go 30 days. And what's interesting is that in sober living and halfway housing, and you know, a lot of types of you know, Katie's House Foundation, etc., it's very common that people pay their rent by the week in cash, because they don't know how to make that go 30 days. And by taking 10 envelopes and saying, here's my rent for next month, here's my utilities for next month. And that really leaves you with your disposable at that point, because you know you need a bedroom or a bed in a safe place. If you don't have shelter, you know, you're not going to be sleeping properly, which means you're definitely not going to be going to work. And you're probably then going to start relapsing or using drugs and alcohol, putting yourself in some type of at-risk situation just because by virtue of not having a roof over your head.
Well, that you can't take a shower, or you can't have some of the normalcies that we all have, you know, just staying out of the rain, you know, not being able to, you know, get the transportation that you need. And yeah, just basic, this is what I need for this item that's very, very important. And I think that again, we talked last week about the budget, knowing, you know, that this much money of your paycheck is going to go to that. And that's where you're saying, okay, this is a way for you to physically take it and remove it from even being able to use it, because it's not a credit card. It's not it's not something that you can keep paying your grocery bill, but you still can't afford those groceries. And then one day you wake up and say, oh shit, how do I pay this credit card?
I mean, what's really interesting though, you know, aside from the credit card conversation, is that people we have seen in the foundation and just even outside of that, who will take money from themselves and they'll give it to someone that they care about, and then they will be short it for their housing for some reason. Like, let's say that they have that's one example, right? Your friend or your grandchild or somebody comes to you and says, can I borrow $200 or $100 or $50? It doesn't matter what the figure is. And you know that, I mean, you maybe don't know because you think you're going to get money some way. But the point is that sometimes it's better, in my opinion, my point is to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that, because if I take it out of that envelope, I'm not going to have enough food. Now, you can go to the food bank. I think people forget about that. There are lots of food banks. We know that. I think, Julie, you and I know that that's more prevalent than, let's say, housing. Housing is very hard to come by. And so I would not be taking money out of the housing and utilities envelope to ever share with anyone under any circumstance. If you don't own your own house, and you're
even if you do, because technically the bank probably owns it.
Yeah, you probably have a mortgage on it. And so, I mean, if you can share with people, that's wonderful. But if you can't, I think you need to recognize that you can't, and you're still a good person and you still love them, but they need to go and find a way to take care of themselves too.
And, you know, I mean, obviously we're talking about a way to deal with your money, and the way to deal with your money in a real, in your face way. So if somebody else needs that money, they must have done something wrong. And that's where I think we're failing our kids in a way, to not teach them some type of way to understand the concept. This isn't math class, although I wish they did cover this in math class. And I think I'm gonna spill the beans here, but I was in the FFA, and when I was in the FFA, we got taught how to balance a checkbook because we had to run the farm. We got taught these kind of items because we had to run the farm, and you can't run the farm with no knowledge of finances. So that was really the only finances I got in high school, was the basics, and that was, you know, checking, budget, you know, stuff like that, that you knew you had to buy the seed to plant the corn, to harvest it, or you weren't going to exist. So, yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of an extreme example, but it's simple, right?
It's very true. It's not even extreme. It's literally what's happening right now. You know, we have immigration that we talk about. It's a competitive job market. There are people willing to work harder that are legal. They're here legally on green cards, and their work ethic is much better. They will work harder in some cases than our own citizens. Of course, I know Americans work very, very hard. I think that we need to expect more of.
Well, I think what you're going into I think you're going more into some of these lower level jobs that are in a quote unquote physical labor, right? And that's where you're kind of saying they work hard. Well, they literally work at a a labor intensive job that some other people are just sitting at a desk and earning $40-50 an hour, where somebody else has to earn, just for $30 they have to be on their feet for 12 hours.
I think it's actually two sides of that coin. So what you're referencing is accurate, but in affluent lending, there are lots of people. So in the worldwide real estate economy, and now we're getting really off topic, but it's important to note this as it relates to work opportunity and work ethic, and then your envelopes, how full they are and how deep your pockets are. There are plenty of 25 and 30-year-olds coming here, and corporations wanting them to come here, and they are paying them $500,000 per year. It's the same 25 or 30-year-olds coming here on a green card, where I used to lend to them because, of course, they can apply for loans, and that's great. We want them to. They're very good parts of our community. But why is a corporation wanting to sponsor someone's green card from another country? And why would the parents want to send their child to America to work here? And it's, my understanding is because they are willing to work harder. I mean, like, reliable. They're just more reliable is probably the word that I can put on it, is that they show up because their parents expect them to show up. That's the expectation, and the accountability that's maybe a little bit different. They probably have a very similar education to a 4-year degree that an American could get here. And so why aren't Americans getting those jobs? Why do we have it's much higher. If you look at the number of green cards that have been approved since Biden's been in, and you can look at other presidents too. The point is that it's up substantially, both in legal immigration for white collar, and then for other individuals, whether they're legal or illegal, in these lower paying jobs. And so what it comes down to is we're supposed to be talking about envelopes, but we're talking about how deep is your envelope.
But you know what? To go into this is really, that's why we're here, because we're not doing some of these things that we need to do for those kids that are growing up here and that are in this system, and that we kind of just gloss over these items because we think that everybody should know them, and everybody already knows them. And obviously when you're in a drug addiction or alcohol addiction or things like that, and you didn't learn the basics, where do you go to learn that? I mean, these are the only type of avenues nowadays to learn about this stuff. I mean, they're probably not going to read books, right? They're not going to read, you read a cash flow book, and I think I'd get a headache now. Although I have read them, I know, I understand the concept now, but that's because I had an interest in that. And that's because I wanted to learn that. I don't think most people want to learn about how much money they don't make, or how much, because that's already something that's in your face every day. And like you said, you got to understand that we're just saying you gotta find a way to learn these concepts and to learn how to function so that you don't get into the same situation you're in now. And you're in that situation now because you didn't learn it from the beginning, but it's not your fault.
Yeah. So using envelopes is a really easy way. Just give it a try for a month. Just try and do that and see if you can get through. And then lastly, I did want to touch on your point, Julie, about having a credit card. I think that actually is a good thing to have. We've had people in the foundation where their car broke down and they took money out of their housing envelope instead of applying for a 0% interest rate credit card. And then, they probably get one for $500 or $1,000, and they could use that to fix their car and then pay that like cash for, let's say, $50 a month, versus now not making their housing payment and having to find a new place to live. Right. So you guys,
you're cutting back on your Starbucks to pay for that car repair that you had to pay for on the credit card.
But you're not taking it from your food.
You're not taking it from your essentials. Yeah, because I mean, that's the whole idea behind the budget, right? Is there's some essentials you need, and then there's some that are, what we call discretionary. So
yeah. And you're not asking mom or your brother or sister or someone else, unless you know for certain that you're going to pay them back the next week. So anyhow, I hope that this was useful for everyone, and we'll be going live on Fridays now. So that way, if you guys have questions, you can always drop them and we can respond. So we will catch you next Friday. Be sure to like and subscribe so you get the bell.
Yes. Hit that button. Have a great week and
have a good week.